This is problem 2 in my balancing chemical equations video series. Here we have a reaction AgBr plus GaPO4 yields Ag3PO4 plus GaBr3. So let's get right into this. The first thing we want to do is we have an unbalanced reaction, meaning that there are unequal amounts of elements on each side. The second thing you want to do is write out a list of all your elements. And what I used to do when I was first learning how to do these was take like a colored marker and circle every single one of my separate elements just so I wouldn't get things confused. So I've circled each of my elements so that I can write out my list. Our first element, when you're just reading from left to right, is Ag, which is silver. We have Br, which is bromine, Ga, which is gallium, P, which is phosphorus, and O, which is oxygen. And I'm going to put this imaginary line here. I just do this for organization. You don't have to do this. And then I'm going to have the same list on the other side, because in a chemical reaction, you're not going to have just complete new elements. You're going to have the same amount of elements on each side. The thing about balancing equations is how much on each side. Those need to be equivalent, meaning we should have the same number of Ags, the same number of Brs, the same number of Gas, and so on and so forth. And that's what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to erase my colors, and we're going to now count how many of each element we have on each side. Now, if you remember, we'll start with Ag, but if you remember, when there's no explicit subscript and there's no number on the bottom right of an element, that just means that there's only one of them. So for our Br, there's no subscript, so there's just one. Our Ga has no subscript, so it's just one. Our P has no subscript, so it's also one. But our oxygen, our O, has a subscript of 4, which means there are 4 oxygens on the left side of the arrow. On the right side of the arrow, meaning these compounds, our Ag has a subscript of 3, so there are 3. Our Br, if I'm just going in order of how I wrote my list, but our Br has a subscript of 3, so that means there are 3 Brs. And our Ga has a subscript of, well, there's nothing there, so we just assume that there's 1. Our P has no subscript, so there is only 1. And our O has a subscript of 4, so there are 4 O's on the right side of the arrow. So now you can kind of see why I wrote my list this way. We can compare how much of each element we have on either side. And as you can see, we have 1 Ag on the left, 3 Ags on the right, 1 Br on the left, 3 Brs on the right. We have an equivalent amount of Gas on the left and right, an equivalent number of Ps on the left and right, an equivalent number of Os on the left and right. So really our biggest thing right now is worrying about our Ags and our Brs. Let's first start with Ag. On the left, we only have 1, and on the right side, we have 3. So the thing you want to do is change your coefficients that are on each compound. And that's how we can change these numbers. So what number can we take or put in front of AgBr to get this 1 to 3? We can put a 3 because a coefficient is, remember, it's just going to be multiplied to each element in that compound to change the amount there are. So this 3 in front of our AgBr is now saying that there are 3 Ags and 3 Brs. And as you can see, our Ags, we have the same amount on each side. Our Brs, there are now equal amounts on each side. And everything else is already balanced, meaning that our work here is essentially almost done. Now, in your class, it will depend on what your instructor will ask of you, but some teachers like to have you put all coefficients for all of your compounds, even if there's nothing there. So let me explain this a little bit better. If there are no coefficients in front of an element or a compound, you simply just write 1 because you're just assuming that there's only one of those compounds. So since we didn't have to change the coefficients on these compounds, we can simply write 1 as their coefficients, and that's it.